Today, I'm talking with Dr. Carrie Mackensen, a clinical psychologist with over 25 years of experience who now coaches parents through the digital challenges that nobody prepared us for. We covered a lot of ground in this conversation. Dr. Carrie reveals what she calls a misdiagnosis epidemic, where kids are being treated for ADHD, depression, and anxiety when the actual cause is their devices. She explains why screen-induced ADHD looks identical to neurological ADHD and that the only way to tell them apart is by doing a 4-week digital detox. She walks through 5 essential digital boundaries for families, like why delaying devices is critical, why your phone shouldn't be nearby when you're with your kids, and why devices should never go into bedrooms. What really stood out to me was her emphasis on relationship first, that the attachment bond that you have with your child fundamentally shapes their brain architecture. And she gives tactics that anybody can use, like pausing at transitions and taking 2 minutes to breathe before you walk in the door from work. This conversation gave me a lot to work on personally, and I think it might do the same for you. Dr. Carrie Mackensen, welcome to the Family IT Guy podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here, Ben.
I was looking at your website, and right at the top of your website is my first thing I want to talk about, because it says at the top of your website, how to raise good, this is like the title, how to raise good humans without battles, meltdowns, or parent guilt. And part of me wants to abandon the whole plan I had for this podcast and just have you talk about that the entire time, because how do you do that? And more seriously, tell us about your background, who you are, and how you got to the point where you could write that beautiful statement and make that your work.
Well, I have a long history. I started working with kids back in 1997, teaching social emotional learning in schools. And then from there, I went on to get my undergraduate degree in psychology, my master's degree in clinical psychology, and then a PhD in individual, family, and child psychology. I have a wide range of experiences, ranging from K-12 schools to working at Cedars-Sinai Hospital as an attending psychologist, to the clinical director of a high-end rehab for addiction, also as a director of eating disorder treatment programs. So I've worked within a lot of different environments with children, adolescents, families, couples. My focus has always been relationships. And so that is a quick snapshot of my background. I did close my private practice. I had a private practice in Beverly Hills and Manhattan Beach. I closed that about 5 years ago after being in the field for a decade and focused on my own kids. And then as they became more independent and more people were reaching out to me for help, I decided to shift into something a bit more hands-on and do parent coaching, because parenting, I believe, is the most important job on the planet. How we parent our kids is what our world becomes. And I went to school and spent a lot of time learning about child development and psychology and brain development, but most parents didn't. No fault of their own. They became an IT specialist like you. Maybe they're the head of a bank. Maybe they have a hair salon. Every parent has something that they are an expert in. I just happen to study child development, psychology, and parenting. And I believe every parent should have this information, whether they got a PhD in it or not. So it's my passion to share it so every parent can have that platform to stand on.
Awesome. This is perfect. I relate to that from my IT perspective of the world. And you are going to, I think, help me, at least personally, just and selfishly, fill some gaps in my knowledge today. And I'm sure for many listening. I picked up on a couple things that I thought were interesting there. So social emotional learning, and relationships and addiction. Mm-hmm. So I just heard about this social emotional learning thing recently. That's a new topic for me. Can you kind of explain what that means?
Well, let's talk about learning in general. Everybody knows what kids do at school, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic. Our kids are sponges. And when they are young, it's the job of the adults in society to give them the information, the knowledge, and the tools they need so that they can grow into productive, valuable members of their society, feel good about themselves, lead a healthy, meaningful, fulfilling life. But there are some things that are taken for granted that you just assume it's human nature. It's just human nature to know how to calm your emotions down. It's not, especially if you grow up in a home where it not only was not taught, but maybe poorly modeled. I've worked with kids from all different backgrounds. And we humans, myself included, we parents are imperfect. We're flawed human beings. So it means none of us do it perfectly, right? And so when our kids go to school, why are they not being taught emotional regulation, how to be a good friend, how to show up in society? They are sitting in chairs. Their brains are open and ready to absorb. They are a captive audience. But these relational and emotional skills are not being taught in schools. They are more commonly, but I started doing it as a research project in my undergraduate training back in 1997, and the kids absolutely loved it.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, it's such a neat, it seems so fundamental. And like you said, like it's not taught in schools. And I guess maybe it's because it's like supposed to be taught at home. But for my parents that might listen to this, no criticism here, but that's us. Like I didn't learn how to manage my emotions as a child. I didn't learn explicitly about relationship dynamics. And I think that my parents, perhaps, I hope this is fair to say, they might agree that maybe they didn't also learn those things, and that because it just comes down through generations, right? I mean, it doesn't just come from nowhere. And so that's why I'm so excited even about the topic itself, is because now I'm a dad and I have the opportunity to pass on stuff to my kid and my future kids. And so the social emotional learning thing for me it's very, very, seems very important. And so thank you for explaining that. The addiction thing. So your clinics were focused on like what types of addiction did you focus on? And then I also want to segue into like modern day addictions and stuff.
Right. So we were dealing with substance abuse primarily at the rehab, but also behavioral addictions. So gambling, sex addicts, alongside somebody who was addicted to heroin, or somebody who, by the prescription and oversight of a doctor, became addicted to morphine, or alcoholics. So whether it was a substance or a behavioral addiction, they come from an underlying similar root, so to speak. And so we can treat all those in one place. Separate from that, I worked extensively in eating disorders, which some people might say is a behavioral addiction, but there's a lot of overlap. At the foundation of addiction, we're talking about those dopamine triggers. And that brings us to modern day addictions. I can remember when I was running the treatment program back in 2009, I heard about the first digital addiction treatment program. People back then were addicted to their BlackBerries. Remember the BlackBerry?
Oh, that was me. I did. Yeah, that was me.
You were addicted to it? I mean, I liked the component of it. But as these new, highly dopamine driven devices have come into our lives, it has opened up another category of addiction.
Yeah, it certainly has. And I've even just recently, now that I'm focusing on this family IT guy thing and really putting a lot of energy into it, I'm hearing more and more about that there are these addiction centers and that there's kids that are going to get treatment, young kids even, for these addictions that come from games or just social media or just different places on the internet. What do you know much about that field and like what's going on there and like what's being done to, like, what are the common problems that are being addressed and stuff? Are you plugged into that?
Yes. So in terms of specific programs for children and adolescents, there aren't any solely designated for digital. There are some outpatient programs. There's one here in Malibu. When you look at the treatment programs, though, there are dual diagnosis treatment programs that treat addiction for children, but then also other disorders, whether eating disorders or intermittent explosive disorder. There are a lot of different treatment programs. And I think the key for having a treatment program, here's the benefit. When you have either an adult or a young person living in a home and you are trying to help them on an outpatient basis, meaning they live at home, but they're either seeing a therapist in an office or a psychiatrist in an office, or if they're going to a more intensive outpatient treatment program where they're there for many hours a day attending groups and psychoeducational programs. That's great. And that level of care is appropriate for many. For some people, they really need to get out of the environment where those triggers and those vulnerabilities continue to live. And so when we talk about a substance abuse treatment program, one of the greatest benefits is that person is now somewhere where they cannot access their social group who's going to give them a drink or give them drugs, and they're safe. A lot of it is just detoxing off the substance so that you can get clarity of mind again. Similarly, an eating disorder treatment program. You've got regimented meals. You've got somebody there who's monitoring. So it's keeping them safe within the environment. Similarly, why these other treatment programs work that are not just specific for digital addiction is that you go into the treatment program and your device is being removed. And so you can't just pick it up at any whim, because every time, as I pick up my device, every time you pick up your device, it is re-triggering that reward pathway. You're getting that big dopamine hit, and it makes it harder to get those breaks in between. So a big benefit is getting them out of the environment. I guide parents through my parent coaching platform to do a digital detox at home, so that when you've got younger kids or adolescents, the parents can oversee it. And the goal is to do it for, depending on the level of severity, but ideally for 4 weeks. In the substance abuse treatment world, 30 days was minimum, 90 days is best in order to really detox the body and start changing those behavioral patterns, but also have the clarity of mind to build in that understanding and new coping skills, whatever that drug, whether it's an illicit drug or a digital device, was using to fill.
That sounds so interesting and so challenging, especially like you said, kind of changing the environment. If you get to separate from the environment, but then you come back after the 30 days, let's say, or the 90 days, whatever it might be. How for the folks dealing with the digital stuff, like, okay, actually, let's start in a more fundamental place. How does somebody know? How does a kid end up, and a kid, whatever it might be, however you want to define it, single digit age, teenagers? How do kids end up in programs like this? What stands out to their parents or to the doctors that are involved that are assessing the patient to say, oh, here are signs that this child needs to get treatment? Like, what does that look like?
So there are different ways I can answer that. I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to start with where we're going to go. And then I'm going to do a little segue. So when you look at when does somebody know they need a higher level of care, we want to think about a continuum. Whenever you're on this edge of the continuum, the far right edge or the far left edge, you're not looking at that bell-shaped curve where most people fall in the middle, and then you get a few of the outliers. But when you're on the extremes, that's when you know you need a higher level of care. And when we look at those differences, it could be the extremes in terms of my child is withdrawn, unreachable, they seem miserable, they don't get joy out of anything in life. It could be as extreme as my child is showing signs of hopelessness, suicidal ideation, or suicidal threats. That could be one end of the continuum that could result from these interactive digital devices. The other end of the continuum, you start talking about extreme emotional outburst, real emotional volatility, aggression, where when the parent tries to intervene, remove some of the screens, they might get a big backlash. The kids will be rude, demanding. Some of those things fall on the other end of the continuum. Then you also start seeing on both sides symptoms like grades are falling, there's problem in relationships, they are withdrawing from activities that used to bring them joy, and or struggling with just your general activities of daily living. Getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, taking the dog for a walk, going to school without being forced, showing up at sports practice, going and hanging out with a friend. When your child stops doing all those things and you're not able to intervene, they might need a higher level of care. But when you mentioned, what is the doctor asking? This is where now I'm going to go back for that little caveat. I write extensively in my forthcoming book about a misdiagnosis epidemic. So unfortunately, a lot of parents are going to their child's pediatrician or primary care physician, and they're explaining the difficulties that they're seeing in their child, the symptoms. And so the doctor will listen and say, oh, it sounds like your child's depressed. Let's try an SSRI, an antidepressant medication.
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Yikes.
Or your child's very anxious. Let's consider putting them on some anxiety medication. Or your child cannot sit still, cannot focus, cannot control their impulses. Sounds like ADHD. Let's put them on stimulant medication. Now, there are times when that is absolutely appropriate, and I am not anti-medication when it's called for. Unfortunately, in a lot of these consultations where the parent is talking to the pediatrician about their child, the pediatrician doesn't stop and say, how many hours a day is your child engaged with screens? Do they play video games? How many hours a day are they playing video games? Do they own a smartphone? Are they on social media? And ask about these new digital pitfalls that we're seeing, because here's the truth. What looks like ADHD, neurological ADHD, which is an actual diagnosis, and it can be treated with several different interventions, but including medication. There's something called screen-induced ADHD, and it looks identical. You cannot separate it out by doing the assessment, whether you're looking at the different psychological evaluations like the Conners and other assessment tools we use to diagnose ADHD, aside from just gathering symptoms. You cannot distinguish neurological ADHD from screen-induced ADHD unless you remove the screens for 4 weeks and one of them goes completely away. So you can take a child that has the symptoms of ADHD, you are treating them with stimulant medication during a really sensitive period of brain development, and now you're filling them up with stimulants. Or you could remove all screens for 4 weeks, and if their symptoms go away, then you know what the root cause was.
Right. It's like in the software world and maybe in the medical world too. It's like a root cause analysis. Like, let's start to change one variable at a time.
Right.
And every time we change a variable, let's observe and see if a change comes. And if it doesn't, then we kind of go to the next variable.
Right.
Wow. But no difference between the two is fascinating. Like, that is deeply fascinating.
Right. And there's also a unique aspect to it, which is it's bidirectional. So go back to those diagnoses that I already mentioned: depression, anxiety, ADHD. Those are things that could be induced by the interactive device, caused by them, or kids who are struggling with those diagnoses, neurological ADHD, real clinical depression. Their depression, their ADHD, their anxiety is made worse by going to the screens. And those kids who are struggling in those areas are the ones that are drawn to those quick hits of dopamine for stimulation. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. And it's tough too to even, to navigate the medical world for ourselves, let alone for our kids, is so difficult. And to get a kid to say like, hey, what's really going on here, to like facilitate a root cause analysis. And then you go to a generalist who is, of course, doing their best to help, but nonetheless, as a generalist, it's hard to even suss out the provider, and who are you working with, and because if the parent doesn't, like you said, how many parents have an advanced study of psychology, right? So there's this new topic now. So for the doctors that are practicing, if they have an this didn't occur until 15, maybe even less than 15 years ago. This didn't exist. All of a sudden it exists, and now it's got to be brought into the diagnostic process.
Right.
And it's already hard enough to diagnose the neurological issues or whatever. And now you got a whole nother set of potential underlying causes. And to take the devices away, because like you said about changing the environment. So then you go back home and then mom and dad are on their phones, either for work or for their own social media or for whatever they're doing. And then maybe brother and sister and their friends are on their, like, how do you separate a human of any age, let alone a kid, from getting right back into this like digital cesspool? How do you go about such a thing?
It sounds daunting, nearly impossible, overwhelming, but having gone through it with countless families, it is possible. It is doable. And just like with alcoholism, often the whole family needs to change to start with. Now, we talk about varying degrees of dysfunction. The digital dysregulation and the digital addiction has also a continuum from, minimal intrusion to it's taken over the whole household. And so how I step in, and it looks like we're getting a little bit of a lag here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. It still looks okay on my side.
So how I step in depends on the environment. So you really do need a full, thorough assessment, or as you said, a true root cause analysis. And it's going to vary by family. So in my forthcoming book, I talk about 3 different levels. Here's the minimum, here's the middle, and here's the full kit and caboodle in terms of how you do this detox in your home. What I do know, regardless of how bad it is or which strategy a family chooses, are they doing a 2 to 4 day detox? Are they doing a 1 to 2 week detox? Are they doing a full month detox? Once they do that detox, setting healthy boundaries around tech is way easier than when you are in full-blown dysregulation, digital dysregulation.
Oh, okay.
And then you start trying to set in. So it's like taking a drug addict and trying to do psychotherapy with them. It doesn't work. You need to be clean and sober in order to use the skills that we're trying to teach. And so as a parent coach, I think some people are confused. Carrie, you're trained in psychology and depth psychoanalysis and relationship dynamics. Why are you focusing on technology in your parent coaching platform? And here's what I say. Those 15 parenting principles that I've established that are essential for developing emotionally healthy, capable, resilient, happy kids who grow into functioning adults, they don't work when your child is actively using. Now, we can look at this in terms of an active alcoholic, somebody who's actively using cocaine, or somebody who is spending 7 hours a day on an interactive screen. It has the same impact on the pathways of their neurology, of their brain. And so we need to remove that device. It's the lowest hanging fruit on the parenting tree. Like, let's remove that.
Yeah.
Let's get a baseline to see where is your child when they are not fundamentally digitally dysregulated. I like to say, this isn't your child. This is your child's brain on screens. Let's remove the screens and let's get back to your child. And then we know what we're working with.
This episode of the Family IT Guy podcast is sponsored by me. iPhone parental controls are notoriously difficult to set up correctly. When parental controls are too complicated, parents give up. And when parents don't use the tools, children pay the price. So I created a step-by-step guide that shows you exactly how to set up an iPhone to protect your child from addiction and from predators. You can disable the internet, disable the App Store, and disable the camera. You can make the screen black and white so that the iPhone becomes a tool instead of a toy. You will have confidence and peace of mind, and your child can be protected from the most dangerous parts of the internet. Go to familyitguy.com to learn more. Wow, that's very powerful. Okay, and it makes me think about the folks that are in the middle of the bell curve that aren't yet, and hopefully never will be, but aren't yet on the extremes. Their kids aren't on the extremes. Mm-hmm. What are the common mistakes or causes that you see with the folks that you work with that sort of everybody else can learn from? Like, oh shoot, if we hadn't made the mistake of X, maybe we wouldn't have ended up in this extreme scenario.
Yes.
Is that a fair question? Is there such a
fair question? In fact, it brings me to my 5 essential digital boundaries every family needs. Boundary number 1, delay is the way. When you say, if we hadn't done X, we wouldn't be here now and Y. If you hadn't given your 2-year-old an iPad, where they learned very early during the most pivotal period of brain development in any human's life, from 0 to 5, that when they are bored or when they are emotionally distressed or when they're craving connection or a stimulation, that they pick up a device. Then at 12 or 13, when that little girl is now going through puberty, she would probably have more capacity and coping skills. So delay is the way is the number 1. These devices are fundamentally wiring our children's brains during the most sensitive period of brain development. So we want to delay giving our children these interactive digital devices for as long as humanly possible. I want to emphasize that word interactive, because an interactive screen is distinct and different from the passive television set that is adhered to your wall or on a piece of furniture. It is the interaction with the screen itself that is lighting up that reward center, unleashing inordinate amounts of dopamine in your child's brain and causing emotional dysregulation, simultaneously shutting down the part of the brain you as a parent want to develop in your kid. Good decision-making, impulse control, emotional regulation, the ability to think about other people. That part of the brain, when they're involved with an interactive screen, whether it's an iPad, a smartphone, a smartwatch, or video game controllers, blood flow is being shunted from the thinking brain because it is being required in the part of the brain that's getting the most lit up by these interactive devices, that emotional hub of the brain, limbic system. And it is created that way on purpose. Tech companies and the gaming industry employ neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists, they call them intention engineers, to make these digital devices and the platforms as addictive as possible. They know exactly what they're doing. So it's not a bad parent, it's not a bad kid. It's what these devices were made to do. So we just don't want to give them to our children when their brains are so sensitive and still developing.
Right. We don't have to set that precedent. Like, it's on us. Like we are the ones that either set that precedent or not.
Correct.
If I just have this thought, this curiosity. I've heard the thing, because you're just talking about this, the neuroscientists and the attention engineers. It sits so heavily in my gut when I consider the intentionality behind engineering products that take advantage of kids.
Yeah.
How do I help from feeling anything but judgmental about the professionals that do that for a living, that understand the brain and that know that they're having an impact on kids and then come back the next day and keep doing it again. Like what is your neurological, psychological analysis of that? And it's okay. If it's purely just me being judgmental, that's fine, I guess. But like, how are there quantities of people that can stomach doing that for a living?
Right.
It's so hard to understand. And I know that I'm just asking a rhetorical question kind of thing. And if you have an actual answer, that's cool too. But
yeah,
I'm just sort of just airing my frustrations here a little bit because I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think you as a parent and as a human being are having an emotional response, trying to understand how someone could intentionally take advantage of a vulnerable child, tween, or teenager. It's one thing when you do so with knowing adults with fully developed brains. It's something entirely different when you're dealing with the sensitive phase of brain development of young children. And they do know this. I will say, when the technology is called persuasive design, and it was pioneered by Fogg, Fogg, a psychologist at Stanford University. It's either BJ Fogg or JB Fogg. My dyslexia comes into play there. I don't know which one it is, but it's neither here nor there. When he created this persuasive design, we didn't have the technologies that we do now. And it really was trying to explore the edges of what we understand about psychology. You know, when you learn how somebody's mind works, it's quite powerful. And you can use that knowledge in order to motivate behaviors. Those motivations could be for the individual's good. They could be for the good of a company looking to make money off of a very successful marketing campaign. Or in the case of technology, they could be used to captivate and hook users' eyeballs and attention so that they make more money than they know what to do with. And so when you look at the human psychology of that, I think sometimes people separate themselves out from the end result. You know, if it's somebody working as an attention engineer, they see their job as, you know, we're using science to get people's attention. They're not walking home with the big paycheck that, you know, the head of the tech company is. I think sometimes I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, maybe they separate out. And then, you know, we can look at the human psychology of greed. And unfortunately, that comes into play. And sometimes, you know, getting what you want over what's best for other people takes precedence. And that would be some of the worst in this human race. You know, that's certainly not the best in us standing up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really try to give the benefit of the doubt as well. And then I just have this lack of understanding as to like how one gets into that position. But the way you describe it makes sense. And I even remember when I was working with a defense contractor that built like jets and helicopters and stuff. And I got to learn from a guy that designed helicopter cockpits how on the topic of human interface design. And how do you arrange the switches and the displays so that when the helicopter pilot is in a high stress situation, he or she does not have to think about, wait, which switch D5, where'd that go? And like they can keep staring at the thing and just boop and just push a switch.
Yeah.
You know, because it like makes sense to them. And so it seems like it's an extension of that, where it's like, well, we're just optimizing this tool.
Right.
And it's going to be optimized for all people that use the tool, you know, including adults and kids and you know. So, okay. Well, thanks for letting me air my frustrations because,
and I imagine many people who are listening feel that inclination to be angry. You know, it's like what the tobacco industry did back when they, you know, it was revealed those cigarette papers, they knew the research of the harm it was causing in terms of lung cancer and heart disease, but they had their own researchers with a sort of counter research, a counterintelligence to put out into the public to tell people, oh no, these are safe. And we see that the tech industry and their big marketing team is doing something similar. Ed tech definitely does that. They evoke fear in parents. If I don't give these devices or these platforms to my child at an early age, they're going to fall behind. They're going to be behind their cohort. But that is actually the opposite of what happens. We know that a child's brain learns best in the three-dimensional world. And as ed tech has increased, their test scores and grades have decreased. Their comprehension has decreased. We are dealing with advanced technology, but we have ancient brains, and we need to work with what we know works. So that first boundary is delay is the way. You want to delay giving your children these devices for as long as humanly possible. I raised our boys, my husband and I raised our children without ever giving them an iPad. They never had their own iPad. Now, I had an iPad, and when we would go on really long road trips or on the airplane when they were really little, before I knew what I know now, I would let them watch a movie, long form content with the beginning, a middle, and an end, from like age 2, age 3, but still had some strict limits around it, but didn't allow them to they never played a game on my phone. That's a trap a lot of parents fall into. Your child's fussy, but you're at your other kid's baseball game and you just need them to be quiet and cooperate. So here, take my iPhone and play X, Y, or Z. Short-term gain causing long-term pain and real damage. You can raise a child without ever giving them your phone. So when my kids were little, they would say, how come I can't play a game on your phone? I said, I don't have any on my phone. It wasn't a lie. I never downloaded them. They said, but so-and-so's mom and so-and-so's mom. I said, they have them on their phone. I don't have them on mine. Let's find something to do in real life. And guess what? They would. So there is a benefit too of delaying, because when you don't introduce it, they don't expect it. And so as they age, they are not only engaging in the real world, but they're also wiring their brain to reach its full potential, because screens really limit how the brain gets wired.
Okay, so if you don't mind, let's dig into that a little bit, because I could see where, let's say it would seem to me fair to assume that, like you said, most parents don't have expertise in psychology or IT or all the things. So they're just doing their thing, and they're doing their best, and they're trying their hardest, and we're all stressed out, and nobody has extra headspace to deal with more stuff, right? And okay, so the baseball game. So we're in the stands at the kid's baseball game, and I'm trying to pay attention, and he's up to bat. Here's my kid, and all right. And then this kid over here is freaking out. And if I give him the short term, here's my phone, just for 5 minutes, man, just, let's chill out for 5 minutes. So I could see it being very easy to do that and to think what's the big deal?
Sure.
How does it go from that to being a big deal? How do the dots connect? Because I could see the gulf between those things being easy to put aside and saying this little thing over here is not going to connect to this big thing. How do those get connected?
Yeah, I love the way you're thinking like a parent. First of all, I want to say there's no shame in the parenting game. It is, as I said earlier, it's not just the most important job. It's also, in my humble opinion, one of the hardest jobs on the planet, because we've never cared so much, felt so responsible, or loved anything or anyone the way we do our children, right? And we just want to do our best. And there is a lot of misinformation about there, including this, what's the big deal? It's 5 minutes. Well, let's understand what happens in the brain. I'll get to that, but let's start by saying the effects are cumulative. Let's think about Pavlov's dog. So when B.F. Skinner was, a behavioral psychologist, and then the Russian psychologist, was it Ivan Pavlov, and he trained the dog to start salivating with the sound of the bell, so that every time they would feed the dog, they would ring a bell. So it made the association, bell, getting fed. And our brains too, it's not just for dogs, the human brain is an associative machine. We learn and make connections by associating things together. All right, so let's go back to the stands at the Little League game. You've got a child who's upset. fussing, giving you a hard time. Doesn't matter how young, the kid probably knows big brother's up to bat and dad wants to pay attention. If I fuss, I get my way. So you might think it's just 5 minutes, but your kid's probably smart. And even if it's on an unconscious level, now they've connected getting fussy, get what I want, get a quick dopamine hit without any effort. Dopamine is not bad. Okay, these interactive digital devices, they flood a brain with dopamine. But dopamine is a chemical used to motivate we humans, to motivate us to do things that are to our benefit. So let's backtrack a little bit. That kid is upset. You want to watch your other kid. This sucks. No parent wants to be in that position. They want to cheer their kid on, and they don't want to deal with a whiny kid either. Handing a phone, quick problem solve. But you're solving one problem, but you're creating a whole host of others, even if it's just 5 minutes. It's kind of like opening Pandora's box. And every time you do it, it builds upon itself. So you're laying those roadways in their brain to be motivated to fill emotional distress, boredom, fill in the blank, with digital stimulation. That really limits your child. Now, here's what stinks. In order to deal with the upset child, you might miss the kid that's up at bat.
Yeah.
But that's going on forever in parenting. We can't be in two places at once. And so you turn to the child who's upset and you say, I see that you're really upset right now, and I want to help you. Is this urgent? Or can I tend to you after Johnny is done at bat? So you just bought yourself some time. If he's like, fine, I want to go to the concession stand and get a Snickers. You're like, okay, you sit here quiet, cheer your brother on, and then we'll talk about the concession stand. Or if they're really distressed, you want to tend to and co-regulate their emotional distress. Oh, you're upset, you're bored, you're having a hard time, or you fell down and you hurt yourself. You want to tend to that. And yeah, it's inconvenient. Not relying on digital devices to aid in parenting is an inconvenient truth. But it is an important truth that leads to kids who reach their full potential in terms of their mental health, emotional health, relational health, brain development. So, yeah, you might miss out on that one. And that's just called parenting. And it's not for the faint of heart. And raising good humans shouldn't be. So
right.
When you say there's a big gap there, 5 minutes isn't going to lead to it, it does. And what we want to orient our kids to, if your child's bored, hey, I see kids over there on the playground. Why don't you go join them? Or here's a ball. Why don't you go ask that little boy over there if he wants to play fetch? Or I was at an event this weekend and there was a boy with a stick up against a tree. He had his own imaginary world going on. I think he was probably 7 or 8. And I'm not kidding. He had that stick up against that tree for a solid 35, 40 minutes.
Oh, awesome.
Those are the things that build a healthy brain. And if his mom just handed him an iPad, not only was she had bypassed that opportunity for him to develop his brain in the 3D world, but learn how to self-soothe him. The second you hand your child a device, and this is important to answer the what's the big deal, you turn their brain into a more emotionally reactive state. You're making your child more difficult to parent when you hand them a digital device, both short-term and long-term.
Yeah, I mean, and doesn't that just tie into just all of parenting, right? Like, regardless of tech, like just in other areas, if my kid is behaving this way and I react this way, I'm shooting myself in the foot because tomorrow it's going to happen again unless I really cut it off or unless I just don't introduce that precedent. And the kid with the stick thing, I always have this picture in my mind of stimulus levels. And since I don't know the first thing about actual psychology, like it's just all made up. And like, I just envision this, I actually envision radio frequencies, So radio frequencies are waves.
Yeah.
And if you have and then like the frequency, if it's a low frequency, then the waves are really far apart. Like the waves are big.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a high frequency, then the waves are close together and they're tight. And I just picture this in my mind of like, if you take the device and that it's immediately a high stimulus, it's stimulating through the visual, is it fair to visual cortex? Like you're literally providing stimulation. Like it's a high stimulus activity versus like the stick is low stimulus.
Correct.
And I often wonder if the mind doesn't need, and rather I'll phrase this as a question since you know these things.
I may or may not.
Does the mind need rest from stimulus in order to be healthy?
100%. Yes. We need those deep rest states aside from sleeping. Times when our nervous system is downregulated, where we have a single focus. People think multitasking is great, but our brains really can only effectively do one thing at a time, both in terms of accomplishing the task well, but also just in terms of our own mental health and well-being. I'm talking about these digital devices and the impact on the developing brain because I'm especially passionate about protecting and advocating for young kids. And also because I don't think parents recognize what it does to children's brains is different and distinct from what it does to a fully developed brain. But we feel it in ourselves. I mean, when I saw you pick up your phone, I could feel it in my body. And anybody listening can do it. Leave your phone in another room, turn it off, and go and do something for 30 minutes knowing your phone is turned off in a room where you can't even see it, out of the line of sight. And pay attention to how you feel before the activity. I work with middle school kids. I say, write down how you feel beforehand, and then write down how you feel after, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour of being without your interactive digital device, smart device. And then similarly, you could do the opposite. Grab your device, carry it around with you, really dive into it. Just go crazy, scroll social media, get into real big rabbit holes, look things up on the internet, like just go nuts. Or with video games, your favorite vice is. Before you do, write down how you feel, and then an hour later, write down how you feel. And everyone can feel that reverberation in their body. And it is well documented.
That really makes me think too about being a modern day adult and a modern day parent, where the same effect on me as a dad is going to be potentially magnified for my kid. But then also this whole, how bad could it be if I give myself the dopamine drip for 5 minutes? How bad could, right? Like, is that little bit going to take me to this big problem over here? And how do I model that for my kid?
Mm-hmm.
And what does my kid see me doing with regulating my own mental state and my stimulus level and how, hyped up my brain is, or settled my, how much stillness I have.
Yes.
Do you find that, this is a terrible analogy, but I'll make it anyways because I think it's funny. The dog whisperer, Cesar Millan.
Yes.
Right. I love his show. And a big theme of his show is, I'm not here to train your dog. I'm here to train you.
Yes.
Is that what you do? Is that like the same thing? Is that where it starts?
Yes. So our children who do not have fully developed brains, they are borrowing ours. We co-regulate them. So the thinking part of the brain, the part of our brain that makes us most human, the prefrontal cortex, we call it the executive functioning center of the brain. That part of the brain isn't fully developed until around age 25. And so the more primitive parts of the brain, the reptilian parts of the hindbrain, they're there when a child comes out. Then it starts to work its way up to that emotional center. This thinking part comes on last. So our job is to go in and be that surrogate brain for our kids. And it's done both through what we say and what we do. But I think you're also touching on something that is not as explicit. Going back to those radio waves, it's our energy field, right? And so if you take a parent who's high strung and amped up and they're like, oh, I've got this, my kid is just always so worked up. And more often than not, although parents will label their kids, oh, I have a sensitive child or a difficult child, without insulting parents, more from a point of view of let's empower parents so they can actually affect positive change in not only their child, but in their family and in themselves. We parents have to look in the mirror. As I said, I'm not perfect. I've got the good, the bad, and the ugly in me. All of us do. But when you love someone as much as we love our kids, that gives us the motivation, hopefully, and the willpower, the strength and perseverance to look at our shortcomings. We aren't just raising kids. While we raise kids, we have an opportunity to refine and grow ourselves in ways that maybe we otherwise wouldn't have. And so, yes, it is the job of the parent. And that brings me to my second boundary, which is parent modeling, or as I call it, parenting with presence over pixels. We want to prioritize connection with our kids over convenience. We know these digital devices, our kids being screen zombies, playing, Fortnite or Minecraft or whatever their favorite game is, or your daughter scrolling social media for an hour plus, feels really convenient as a parent because then you can get done all the things you need to do. But did any of us have kids because we're like, parenting is just super easy and convenient, and this way I will just make my life a lot easier, and then I can grow my company or have more time to do yoga and stretch and take, we do need self-care. I'm not saying we should put that in there. But in our digital world where everything is instantaneous and I can go on my phone and have something delivered from Amazon this afternoon without having to leave the house, some of that cultural shift, understandably, has now infiltrated the way we think about parenting. We think that things should just be easy, but it's not easy. You could say that's the bad news, but the good news is those are opportunities for connection. And our job as a parent isn't just to raise a kid to become an adult, but we're also developing relationships. Our kids need us right now. They're dependent upon us. But our job as a parent is essentially to work ourselves out of the job. That doesn't mean the relationship ends. So instead of our kids coming to us out of a need, they need us to meet their basic needs, etc. It shifts at a certain point where they come to us because they want to be there. They enjoy our company. We have a solid relationship. And they look to us for guidance and community. And those are the relationships that last. So we're not just parenting for this moment. When you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, how do you envision your family? So we need to pause and also think long term about that role with our child. And that's where the connection and parenting with presence over pixels comes into play, because we're building a relationship with our kids. And then, I know I've gone on a little bit here, so really quickly, I want to hearken it back to the field of interpersonal neurobiology. One of my most favorite mentors, Dr. Daniel Siegel, who founded this field. At the crux of it, it's the way that relationships shape the brain. The most important part of raising our kids is the relationship we have with them. Our relationship with our child fundamentally builds brain architecture. We wire them from the inside out.
Wow. That is that hits me in a good way. Because I am constantly thinking about, and my wife and I are constantly talking about what precedents are we trying to set? What, from day to day, what is our kids doing? What we use this phrase, doing what he's supposed to do or not. and what is that and why? But the relationship piece being at the top, that's such a neat thing to consider, because then that would have me potentially respond. Let's say he's doing something that he's not supposed to do.
Typical.
Or not, something like that, where perhaps the focusing on the relationship first would bring me to an easier place of seeking understanding, of saying, like, I actually really just want to talk to you about, like, how did you feel in that moment?
Yes.
Am I on the right track there? Is that?
Yes, you are spot on. And I can tell you're a good dad, because your mind goes to,
thanks.
How do I communicate with my child? And listen, I always like to bring it back to, I'm, just like everybody else. I have those moments when I give a quick reaction to my kids because they're doing something they're, to use words, not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now, when there's safety to come in quick and sharp, to really fast get their attention, that's appropriate. But most of the time, it's not life or death. And if we go back to the most important part of our job as a parent, is that attachment bond we have with our child. That's what most fundamentally shapes their neural growth, who they become, how they feel about themselves, their self-esteem, how they interact in relationships, how they regulate their emotions, how they show up in the world. It's our relationship with our kids, that attachment with our kids, that's most fundamental. And when we lead with that, it alters the lens through which we see everything and how we approach things. So that is most fundamental. And so instead of saying, what are you doing? It's, I'm curious. What's going on here? There's a difference. Accusatory. And one was, I'm curious. Because we might be thinking they're trying to be, mischievous, but maybe they have a genuine question about how things work. I have a 10-year-old who's like that, and he's always tinkering with things. And to me, it looks destructive. To him, he has a whole idea as to why he's taking apart the clock, So instead of yelling at him, I'm like,
I could relate.
Hey, what's going on here? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you doing?
Yeah, I could really relate to that, because I was the kid taking apart stuff to try to figure out how it worked, and probably stuff that, like, I have this picture in my head. I don't know how old I must have been, single digit age, of some sort of disassembling our stereo amplifier, which
sounds like,
looking back as an adult, like, A, that's a good way to get electrocuted, and B, that thing may not have come back together after I took it apart,
Yeah.
So the example there, and also it just strikes me that probably, let me know if you think this is accurate, that not only is it the words you use, but it's how do you feel as you use those words of, I'm curious about what you're up to versus I'm sort of mad at you. And maybe starting with the words helps to adapt, but, like, I could see this being a very difficult thing to achieve under stress.
It is difficult under stress. And it does take practice. It's why doing those things that involve self-care, that I kind of made a joke of earlier, but it is important to, whether for you that's yoga or mindfulness meditation or going for a walk or a jog with friends, whatever things help you manage your nervous system and regulate your emotions. It's really important that we parents practice that, because to your point, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And along the lines of how you say it, that's your whole energy field. And so can we come into the interaction from a place of the intention is connection, the motivation is love, a desire to guide. If we can come from that place, you can maybe even listeners can feel there's a shift in your body. It's like you just throttle back a little bit and you can accomplish the same things. It might take longer, it's a little more inconvenient, but it leads to lasting change, because when we're yelling at our kids or coming in too harsh, the way their brains work, they experience a threat, and that part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex we want to develop, that's going to shut down anyway. So whatever we're saying, they're not really comprehending because they're in a stress threat state. Think fight or flight.
Yeah.
Which is also what these devices do to our kids.
How might one go about assessing their energy field? Because if I think about, I really like that. And when I look at something I'm trying to achieve, I like to look at what's my current state? What's my desired end state? And then how do I fill the gap? How do I get there? Mm-hmm. And so how do I go about assessing my current energy field? Are there any methods or things that I can do to help me just get into like a self-assessment? Like, where am I now?
Yes. Pause. When in doubt, pause. And first do an internal scan. So here's something that I guide parents to do. Transitions are really good periods of time to do these paused moments that I will describe here shortly. But, I grew up in Oklahoma. My dad loves watching NASCAR. I don't know if you remember the yellow flag that would come out on the track. Yellow flag is raised.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Caution on the track, right? There's a wreck up.
Yeah.
And to slow down. So I would think of those either transition moments as that's a good time to bring out the yellow flag and slow down, or when you feel that knee-jerk reaction, your kid's in a heightened state, try to visualize that yellow flag and say, okay, caution on the track. There's an oil spill. I don't want to make this situation worse. Let me downshift. Let me slow down. So we can get to in the moment, but I like to front load as much as possible. So here are some things I do and things I direct parents I work with to do. When we talk about our own digital usage, since you're the IT family guy, that second boundary, parenting with presence over pixels, there's different layers of this second boundary, but one of them is we need to monitor our own digital usage. As you brought up earlier, doesn't this affect us? Yes, it does. Now, to varying degrees, and we can come back to that if you want some proof and some research documented in our mental health decline that we see across age groups. But when we look at what it's doing to parents, these digital devices disrupt our dopamine system, which is distracting from what matters most to us in life, which is our own kids. And I don't fault any parents for this. I mean, I've got my phone right here. We have had a cultural shift that we've all been swallowed up in. And so we all have our own digital devices with us all the time. And if you leave the house without it, you might have that feeling of missing a limb. Like I feel like I don't have my arm without my device. It's really become a part of ourselves. But one simple thing we can do to downshift our nervous system is to leave our device in another room when we're engaged with our kids. When I was growing up and they introduced the portable phones, the cordless phone.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't carry the cordless phone around with us from room to room in the house. Like it sat in the cradle, and if it rang, then we would go to it. But we carry our smartphone, this cordless phone, around with us all the time. And it's got notifications and all these things that ping us out of the moment. And we, parents, are wired. And that affects our energy field. So some things we can do is not start the day with digital devices. Get an alarm clock. don't use your phone as an alarm so that you aren't tempted to get on your phone first thing in the morning, because that's juicing up your nervous system, which then, even before you engage with your kids, they're so sensitive to our nervous system. They can feel it from the other room. So we want
Wow.
to pay attention to that. Something that I do daily, not always in the morning, a meditation app. Sometimes I do a full 10-minute guided meditation. Sometimes I have time for 3 minutes. I do whatever works. My favorite, I have no financial affiliation with Happier, started by Dan Harris. I love this app.
Oh, okay.
10% Happier. It's called Happier. What I like about it, there are also courses that teach you about mindfulness. So one of the most important things we parents can do is start to incorporate some own mindfulness practice into our daily lives. That helps us have our mind in our body where we can control it, rather than our minds all over the place and we have this knee-jerk reaction to lose our stuff when our kids do X, Y, or Z. So those are some that help. Another thing that helps parents, and I feel like I'm kind of going off course here, but
No, this is great.
But instead of carrying your phone around, at our house, we've got a wooden bowl in our kitchen near Alexa, another digital device. But I set my phone there and I turn the ringer on. So if I get a phone call, I can check it, but I have all other notifications turned off. I don't get dinged for any other reason, because those things are, again, creating that hyper arousal, that fight or flight state in the parent. So we want to do everything we can to take care of our own mental and emotional health and regulate our nervous system first and foremost. And then during transition periods, this is the last thing I'll say on this question. When I had parents who, whether they were worked outside of the home or a stay-at-home parent, those transition periods. So if the parent had been at work during the day and they're pulling into the driveway or the garage, you've got all the stuff from work, you grab your things, you go into the house and you're carrying a whole bunch of stuff with you. Before you go into the house, turn off your car, set everything down, set a timer on your phone or do a little guided meditation. Could be a 2-minute timer. Close your eyes.
Oh.
Feel your bum in your seat. Feel your feet on the floor and take 3 deep breaths in through your nose. Pause, and then exhale twice as long out your mouth slowly. That gives the parent a fighting chance for whatever they meet when they go in the home. And then similarly with stay-at-home moms, if you're picking your child up from school or before they come in off the bus, get to the school parking lot early, park, do the same thing. Or before they come in off the bus, grab a seat in your house, do the same thing. We parents have to regulate ourselves so that we can show up in connection with the best of us when our kids do come into the picture.
That's good. That's really good. The transition times, being intentional and very conscious about a transition. So it's a physical transition, because maybe that's like, for me, maybe that's easier to recognize. Like you said, if you come home or if you're going to pick up your kid, you're moving spaces.
Yeah.
Take that time to sit for a minute.
1 to 2 minutes.
I mean, because I feel so overwhelmingly busy all the time. I work generally 6 days a week and generally morning to night, sometimes till like 2 or 3 in the morning.
That's late.
And I'm in go mode. Like I'm building, and, I do not pause between transitions. I move between transitions as quickly as I can because I'm busy.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that I feel like it's like an investment thing. Like if you can invest the 2 minutes, and at the end of the day, busy or not, I have 2 minutes. Right. I do. I absolutely do. So I really like that. I think that's really great. And I could imagine too that we could do that with our kids, either whether or not they participate directly or if they just are passively, hey, before we go in the house, we're going to sit here for a minute. I'm going to start my 2-minute timer. We're going to take 3 deep breaths. We're going to do the 2-to-1 thing. I've heard Dr. Daniel Amen talk about that, the twice as long exhale versus the inhale. To the effect, by the way, that I'm actually building myself a meditation app to do just that program, so I can have it on my watch, and my watch can like tap on my wrist and tell me when to breathe.
Using technology as a tool to benefit you.
Yeah.
Technology is not a
but I'm going to check out the happier thing too. Right. And so the transitions, because we've seen great effect here, and we're not very consistent as a family in terms of this, but so we do consistently take every Sunday off. That's nice. So every Sunday is like no outside influence. There's no screens. We don't even talk to anybody else. We turn our phones off. It's just us.
Wow.
And we used to meditate every Sunday together. And we've kind of fallen off that. I think we need to get back on that, because the more we talk here, the more that seems to be, and although I know that that's like a fundamental thing, but yet sometimes even though we know things, we don't do them, right? Like yes. That's something that needs to come back, for all of us, because then for each of us as individuals, as our little group, as our little family, like it just, I'm really positively energized by the conversation here and discussing this and the fundamental nature and the fact that you can then, if you practice that at these transition times that are obvious, then perhaps as you're saying and alluding to, that like you can then practice it when stuff's crazy.
Right. Yeah. You want to front load. So as we were talking earlier about how the kids, the earlier they're introduced to these digital devices, the more they're on them, it's cumulative. The damage adds up over time. Well, why is that? Neuroplasticity of the brain. What the brain does is what the brain becomes, but it also works in reverse for beneficial things. So when you take pauses in these transition periods, that's cumulative also. And you're teaching your brain to pause, downregulate, and be more present. And so when you do that, start your day with it. Then before you, after you drop your kid off at work or before you head into the office, then before you reconnect with your child or your wife, do it there, at those transition points. And then again, before you go to bed at night, so what are we talking about? Like, easy 4 times a day, if you can bake in more if you want to. But I know you said you want to rush through transitions because you're busy. My husband trained with the Navy SEALs, and they say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I think that's here too. You might be slowing down, but you're debugging yourself so that you're moving more smoothly and more efficiently. And those are great to teach our kids.
That, man, you can just apply that to so many things. I love that. The slow is smooth thing. And maybe I like it too because I'm slow. I move slow to begin with. My nickname as a kid was Turtle. My dad used to call me Turtle, so I can sort of enjoy the like slow is smooth. And, okay, cool. Maybe,
steady wins the race.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've applied that to my career for sure. Anytime I learn anything new, I'm real slow. It takes me a long time to pick it up, but eventually I'll get there and then I'll come through and cross that finish line. But, okay. And then, so you had, was it 5 boundaries?
Yes. So the first one, delay is the way. You want to delay your kids getting these devices for as long as humanly possible, whether it's your phone, iPads, video games, or their own smartphone. Delay, delay, delay. Ideally, you don't want to give your child a smartphone until they're at least 16. That doesn't mean they can't have a communication device at an age-appropriate stage. There are alternatives. My favorite is Bark. They've got a great thing going on there. Bark, I usually have it nearby. It looks just like a smartphone. It's an Android phone, but it is not connected to the World Wide Web. Only parents can download apps. And so It is a way for your child to just have talk and text. They can take pictures. You could download a music app so they could listen to music. And that's more than enough. They don't need social media. And that's a way of them having the communication capabilities without all the damaging dopamine hits that are very addictive. Gab is another one, GABB. Or I have here, a basic Nokia flip phone. You just wanted
there we go.
The internet. These are actually coming back. They're cool again. A lot of college kids are getting them because they want to reclaim their life. And they know that we've all kind of been swallowed up by this digital dystopia. So number one, delays. Number two, parenting with presence over pixels. So we talked some about we parents have to model the connection we want to see, right? Both in how we interact with our kids, but also in getting off and reducing our digital time. Something that pains me when I'm driving down the road, I'm at a stoplight, I look over, even when I'm driving and I see friends who are moms and I see their kids in the back and they're on their phone while they're driving, which is so, so dangerous. Yet these same parents will threaten their kid with their life. If you turn 16 and I catch you on your phone in your car, you're dead. But if your child has watched you on your phone since they were in a front-facing car seat at age 2, so for 14 years on an unconscious level, they have been coding this in. What's the first thing they're going to do when they're driving? And those unconscious imprintings are actually harder to correct. So we need to model it.
Yeah.
But we also just want to get back to parenting with presence, prioritizing what matters most, connecting to our child's internal world, not just their external behaviors, but being curious about their internal world of thoughts, feelings, and dreams, and co-regulating their emotional states. Those are the things that give them the tools they'll need to really be successful in life, not some ed tech app that claims to improve their math skills. The third boundary is location limits. When your children do have these devices at an age-appropriate stage, they only live in common areas, only in shared family spaces, never behind closed doors, and never in bedrooms, period. Whether it's a smartphone, an iPad, a PC, they do not belong in your child's bedroom. That one boundary alone protects kids from most of the most disastrous digital things that people can't come back from. Kids purchasing drugs through Snapchat or chatting with an AI chatbot or sending nudes and becoming clinically depressed or threatening suicide or committing suicide. Devices don't go behind closed doors. And parents often say, well, what's the big deal? Well, would you let a world full of strangers found in dark alleys and who knows where and different parts of the world, you mentioned, something in Russia earlier. No, you wouldn't. Why? Because you don't know these people. But if you're allowing a device behind closed doors in your child's room, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. That's a strong one. I often echo that. People ask me like, what's the first thing you would advise parents to do? And that's the first one, so I'm glad to hear you say that. Yeah.
Common areas only. It also protects that second boundary, presence over pixels, when even if they're on a device, but you're in the kitchen and they're in the connected living room and you can see what they're doing, there's organic conversation and connection that happens. Or you might sit next to your child and say, oh, I hear you laughing. What are you laughing about? And they could say, oh, my friend just sent me this funny meme. And so again, we're getting back to connection is key. That is the antidote against the digital disruption. So boundary number 1, delays the way. Boundary number 2, what you model, parenting with presence over pixels. Boundary number 3, location limits. Only in common areas these devices live. Boundary number 4, time limits. So we live in a tech-saturated world. Digital media and devices are not going anywhere. They're only going to become more prevalent. So what we want to do is develop a healthy relationship with them. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So what is a healthy amount? According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, you want to limit it to 2 hours a day of recreational screen time for kids over the age of 6. So from 6 to 18, no more than 2 hours a day. And most parents are like, oh, shoot, my kids go way beyond that, because it includes YouTube. YouTube is social media. For parents who don't know, it's run by an algorithm. It has an endless loop.
That's right.
It's going to feed your kids more and more extreme content to keep their eyes glued. That's that persuasive design. So whether it's YouTube, do not let your kids watch YouTube shorts. That's like you're training your kids to have a brain that cannot sustain attention. I know.
I wish you could turn the damn things off. It's
right. Whether it's video games, smartphone, recreational use on the computer, distinct and different from using technology as a tool. Like, let's be clear, nobody's getting addicted to Excel spreadsheets.
Right.
Tech is a tool. Your kid going on and watching memes, cycle through endlessly. So 2 hours a day. Kids before the age of 2 should have no screen time. Between 2 and 5, 1 hour, preferably co-watched, and long form content. These are what you want to aim for. Don't beat yourself up if you didn't do it. Once you have information, then you can make changes. And again, this is what's ideal. So let's say currently your kids are having like 6 hours of interactive screen time on a Saturday. 2 is the goal. Maybe you move it to 4. Then you move it to 3. What we want to do is start moving towards healthier choices. I personally believe kids are better served by not having video games in their home. And I've got a whole host of research to show you why, but I get a lot of pushback there, especially around dads. It's usually the dads who like to game themselves. But remind those dads, the video games you played growing up are not the video games your kids are playing today. The games.
Yes, isn't that the truth?
Yes. But if that's a non-negotiable, I'd wait until age 12 and I would do a 30-minute rule. They can only play for 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes max at a time, preferably on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you can go screen-free Monday through Thursday, you're doing a huge favor for your child's brain development, for your family culture, for emotional, mental health. It's an overall positive.
Yeah.
Boundary number 5. So we went through, now we're coming to boundary number 5. It's about priority. We want to prioritize the real world over the digital world. We want to prioritize real life over the virtual world. So what does that mean? Well, it means your child connects with you and has family time, completes their homework, does their chores, their responsibilities, does their after-school activity, has family dinner, back in the location boundary I didn't mention, there's no screens at family dinner. Part of that location boundary that I neglected to mention. They've had family dinner, maybe they've showered. There's really not much time left after a school day. As the real world fills up, screen time naturally shrinks down.
Yeah.
They need to do all of those things before you even consider letting them have screen time. And when they come to you and say, like my kids, hey, can I watch a show? I'll go through, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? And it's either you've got to do those things first, or even if they've done those things, sometimes I just say, no, find something to do that doesn't involve a screen. And they always do. They don't want to be bored. They get creative and they build real skills they can use in life alongside building a healthy brain.
Yeah, I love that. This is so good. This is so good. I printed out I haven't even asked you any of my questions yet. You want to do part 2? Can we do part 2 and talk more?
Yeah.
Because this is solid stuff.
You can answer them.
Yeah. Because I do want to, I want to do these and I want to dig in further. There's just, you have just a wonderful wealth of knowledge and experience here that just fills in all the parts that I don't know about. And like you said, I mean, how many people are psychology experts and have experience with clinical environments and things. And so thank you so much. And let's do this again. I have a lot to take away from this. I imagine everybody listening does too, but I certainly do. And it's the relationship first thing really stands out. The pausing between transitions, using those pauses for a mindfulness moment, a meditation moment, or even if it's just sitting there, like let's turn off all the things and just sit, like have nothing, no stimulus, right? The location thing is amazing. And I think that's, like you said, it's just so critical for safety and stuff too. Beautiful stuff. So I look forward to doing it again. And thank you for taking all the time out today to share all this with us. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad that you found it helpful. I would gladly join again. I like to say it takes a village. We parents need to come together. No other generation of parents have had to face what we are up against in today's day.
Yeah. We're all doing this for the first time together and nobody knows how.
Right. And as the research comes in, we are learning what works. It's just not widely disseminated to parents, which is what I'm aiming to do. That's the goal. And hopefully, as my book comes out in 2026, that will help out a lot of parents, but also doing podcasts like yours, just to have conversations, because we need to take, the doubt and the questioning and the shame out of parenting and just put it all out on the table and say, we're all just doing the best we can with the knowledge and information we have. We haven't had the knowledge and information. Now that we do, we can adjust ourselves accordingly. And then all families, all kids are going to benefit from it. If parents listening are struggling with their kids in any way, if their kid is struggling emotionally or with attention or in school, with mental health, please know that lovable child that they remember is still in there. Often they are buried under digital overstimulation. And when the screens come down, the real child that you know and love reemerges. So we parents just have to be willing to hold that boundary to protect the space so that our kids have that chance to be their true self, right? Because these screens are not serving them, they're damaging them. And so we want to clear the way so that they can fully emerge and be healthy and happy.
That's so beautiful. Where can people find you, by the way? Where should people look you up?
I have a website, successfulparent.com. And then ironically, I have an Instagram, even though I'm trying to get people to reduce their screen time. My book editor.
Me too.
Has some social media following. It's at successful_parent on Instagram. And then I have a newsletter. It goes out once a week. I give parents a distilled down version of the brain science, what we know from developmental psychology and relationship psychology. And I put it into plain speak. I credit my Oklahoma upbringing for that. I take all the jargon out and I say, here's what you need to know as a parent. This is what I got from my doctoral program. Here's what the research shows. Let me distill it down, and it comes out once a week. So they can go to successfulparent.com/newsletter and sign up for that. Excellent.
I'm going to sign up for that. I want to see.
Need some feedback.
Well, thanks again. And I after we finish our call here, and I welcome the audience that's listening to join me in taking a pause.
I love that. Thank you. I will do it too.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
I appreciate you too. Thank you, Ben.